The missing piece of that puzzle is, will you actually do it? And how are you going to pay for it?
Quite the events unfolding here. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got Francois-Philippe Champagne announcing that they'll be tabling no budget. Not only that, they're avoiding a confidence vote in doing this. That's right, they're just going around democracy. No point having confidence in the House when you can just abuse the system with special warrants and just issuing money to themselves. We've got a Liberal throwing a tantrum. We've got Gregor Robertson starting off his career here, saying more stupid things that make absolutely no sense, and a bunch of other stuff. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we've got this bombshell story. Francois-Philippe Champagne has announced they're not tabling a budget this year. They're just going to spend money willy-nilly and have no accountability. And as Table Salt posting here, countries that are doing a 2025 annual budget: Afghanistan under the Taliban, North Korea, Palestinian Authority, Iraq, Iran, etc. Canada, no. Not Canada. All these other countries, they're doing a budget, not Canada. Before we jump into all the trickery of dodging the confidence vote, let's just take a look at Nate Erskine-Smith having a meltdown on Twitter. He had that housing portfolio he got from Justin Trudeau. Mark Carney kept him in that position for his first couple weeks there as Prime Minister and then kicked him out. And he's pissed off. Says congratulations to new and old colleagues who were sworn in today. This moment calls for a capable team ready to work quickly. It's nice to see a number of colleagues receive overdue recognition. And I'm hopeful we'll see a lot accomplished in the coming months. I ran because of the opportunity to make a bigger difference around the cabinet table and to help fix the housing crisis. I'm not back in any role, unfortunately, so it may surprise you to learn that it's been a strange day on my end. So that's right. So he announced on his podcast that he was going to step down, and then Trudeau made him a minister, and then he decided, okay, I'll stay in, and then Carney kicked him out, and now he's pissed off here. He says it's impossible to feel disrespected, and the way it played out doesn't sit right, but I'm mostly disappointed that my team and I won't have the chance to build all we accomplished with only a short runway. I mean, let's get real. He accomplished nothing as housing minister. He goes on to say our ambitious housing plan was bigger, blah, 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 blah. You never know what the future holds. He'll keep working in his neighborhood. Thanks to everyone. This is a very self-entitled, grumpy, and frankly, just a ridiculous set of tweets. It goes on to show that he went for a run at the beach. Those podcasts didn't pay off. Quit whining. You belong to a party that celebrate hiring based on immutable characteristics. Now you know how most Canadians feel. Imagine unretiring for this. You voted for this. You feel disrespected. You're not entitled to a cabinet position. You're a public servant. What a weird comment, Nate. There's a couple of Liberals saying he shouldn't have said this. I mean, he looks like an absolute fool saying this. Nate Erskine-Smith, everyone. Next up in this bombshell news, it says Carney Liberal Finance Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne says there will be no budget this year, only a fall economic statement. I'm sorry, what? That's not how Canada works. You can't just not table a budget.
Breaking news, folks. The Carney government just said that it's not going to be tabling a budget this year. Crazy, folks. I mean, first of all, this decision alone is a huge crack in Carney's credibility. Look, how can you have any credibility on fiscal responsibility if you can't even put together a budget plan, right? How can you even be a financial wizard if you can't even put together a budget? A huge credibility issue here.
I mean, Mark Carney's supposed to be this economic genius, Mr. Banker, Mr. Goldman Sachs. He can't even put together a budget. As Franco says here, huge credibility crack. It's embarrassing.
So here we are, the tax cut. And while I appreciate it was the first promise I think you made in the election campaign, and you want to really help middle-class Canadians, that's going to cost about $5-6 billion. You know, we have no way to place that into the financial framework of the country right now, right? Because you haven't updated the numbers, right?
No, but we've been very transparent in the platform. I mean, the priorities that have been outlined by the Prime Minister, building one economy and making sure we favor Canadian companies in public procurement.
No, the promises I get, but we don't know what the deficit is. We don't know what the growth projections are. None of those things, right?
And that's why we're going to provide that update to Canadian, a substantive update when we're coming back, which will take into account what we have seen in the market.
These guys are intentionally avoiding a confidence vote. That's what this is. These are more dirty tactics where tax-paying Canadians aren't getting representation.
Hopefully by then there'll be less uncertainty that we need to factor into. So for me, it's about transparency with Canadians. I want to be straight with Canadians and give them the best possible picture that I can. And that's why I say Canadians understand there's kind of a logical order. You provide the tax cut.
There's nothing transparent about this at all.
You have the throne speech. You have a fall economic update, which is going to be substantive.
No, throne speech and then you guys provide a budget. Then we have a confidence vote in the House. They're avoiding a major step here. What is happening to our country? It's like democracy is just flew out the window here as soon as Mark Carney won the election.
Well,
we've seen that in the past.
Why is the logical order to reduce government revenues by cutting the taxes before you update the country on the state of the government?
Well, because that's the flagship promise that the Prime Minister has made, and we have delivered on it today.
I hate to agree with David Cochrane, but yeah, cutting the taxes isn't number one. Doing a throne speech, laying out a budget are the first steps, and then you have to get votes on that. You have to have the confidence of the House, and they're just skipping that because they don't want to bother with having confidence in the House. We might as well just rename our country to North Korea. I should clarify, the throne speech is still a confidence vote, but so is the budget. Typically, the budget is a much more dangerous confidence vote because the other parties, or one other party that supports the Liberals because they have a minority, has to support their spending. In this case, the NDP, if they work out a deal with the Liberals before coming back, that they'll become official party status and get that funding, they would support the government in a throne speech. But who knows, if they table a budget that's awful, maybe the NDP doesn't want to support that, and then the government would fall and go to election right away.
He's been instructing us. You've seen him sign the order, and then we're going to have a Ways and Means motion as soon as we get back in Parliament. We're going to table legislation. And that matters to Canadians because you're talking about 22 million people who are going to benefit from that. This is starting July 1st.
These guys are just trying to use this little carrot of a pathetic tax cut of $33 a month to trick Canadians into forgetting that we aren't having a confidence vote. This is unbelievable.
Conservatives have criticized this, saying Canadians were told that Mark Carney, the supposed serious economist, and these are Pierre Poilievre's words, not mine, would bring competence and clarity. Instead, we're getting delays and dysfunction. What's your response to the Conservative?
Well, competence and clarity is that you have to do things logically, step by step, and provide that with proof.
There's nothing logical about dodging a confidence motion, period. You guys need to do a throne speech, lay out a budget, and get confidence in it from the House. That's how this works. You guys are dodging this. This is already subverting democracy. It's expected that the NDP will support them on the throne speech. Within a few months, in comparison, Stephen Harper dropped his budget 4 months after the throne speech. But it appears these guys want to go the rest of the year without a budget. They're skipping this entire step, which is essential because how do we hold them accountable otherwise? We don't have a real country anymore.
There will be a fall economic statement. There will not be a budget this year. And so that likely means with holidays and all of that there probably will be a 2-year period, about a 2-year period where their government will not have presented a budget. What do you make of that?
Well, remember the government actually did present the fall economic statement in December. It was actually tabled in the House of Commons. We forget that because that was the day that Chrystia Freeland resigned. So we've had an update already in terms of the forecast of what the government's view is of the economy. Now, obviously, things have changed since then. There's been new policy decisions, and obviously there were fiscal forecasts presented on that in the platforms of each of the respective parties in the election. For this particular circumstance, given the high degree of uncertainty about what's happening in the U.S. economy and how that would affect, obviously, the outlook of finances in Canada, it's not unreasonable to want to take a little bit of time to get a sense of where things are going in the economy. Because, of course, if we are in a
there's a big difference between a little bit of time, tabling a budget 2 months from now, and not tabling a budget at all. We still have 7.5 months in this year.
Recession, that will have a significant impact on public finances. If we're not in a recession, that will have a significant impact in the other direction. And we need to kind of let that play out a little bit before we know. So I understand why people would be concerned about the timing, but as long as we get that in the fall, I wouldn't worry too much.
I was wondering, Tyler, if this is Prime Minister Mark Carney leaning on his bank governor kind of ways, and that the bank often will act proactively, defensively, depending on where the economy is, where they think it's going in this moment of extreme volatility. Who knows what's going to happen with...
CBC wastes no opportunity to defend Mark Carney. Your white knight hasn't done anything for Canada. He didn't make a deal with Trump. There's still no deal. Trump just made a deal with Qatar and the UK, and he stopped that war between India and Pakistan. I mean, even China has been able to work out a temporary deal with Donald Trump, a 30-day pause on their tariffs, minimizing it down to like 10% to make a deal.
The trade war with the United States, is that what could Is that what you're implying is going on here?
Well, I think it's just a reflection that the reality is the single biggest thing that's going to determine what the shape of public finances are in the short to medium term is going to be whether or not we're in a recession. And that will be determined in part by what happens in the global economy and also the feedback effect of whether the U.S. is in a recession as well. And so we'll see how that plays out. But I would just caution that this is not unheard of for governments to want to wait to kind of let the smoke clear a little bit in the current haze that we're in.
There's a difference between not wanting to table a budget and delaying a month before tabling a budget. Mark Carney is just humiliating Canada right out of the gate. Mark Carney's acting as if he's got some big super majority, which he does not. He doesn't even have majority government. I have a feeling we're going to see some sneaky business, some dirty deals. Something is going to happen in the next 2 weeks before the House comes back. With that, we've got Vasi Capellos interviewing Francois Philippe Champagne and why there's going to be no budget.
I want to ask you explicitly, will there be an actual budget in 2025?
There will be a fall economic statement when we're coming back. And what I said is that we need to go in the logical order. So you just said it very well. This is a flagship promise from the Prime Minister. So the first assignment, the first thing coming out of the first cabinet meeting is the middle class tax cut. This is going to affect 22 million families.
This middle class tax cut is ridiculous. It's $33 per month. That's not doing anything. I've seen multiple comments on my channel that it doesn't cover the cost of food increase. It doesn't cover the cost of property tax increase. This is not saving Canada. And side note, why does Francois always look like he's just been spooked by a ghost? Ooh.
22 million people in this country. This is very significant. And this is the first thing we're going to be doing. The second thing, you have a throne speech because we just started the legislature, so we need to do that. And when we're coming back in the fall, there'll be a substantive fall economic statement where we're going to take into account of what has happened and provide clarity, transparency to Canadian. And I've said it again when I was doing that. I want to be prudent. I want to provide stability, predictability. And you would agree with me, we live in a very, unpredictable world in terms of the macroeconomic picture we're having. Next week, I'm going to be hosting the G7 finance minister with the central bank governors. We're going to try to look into that a bit. So by then, we'll have a better understanding of these macro trends that could have an impact on the Canadian economy. But in the meantime, we're going to do what matters to Canadians, reduce their taxes, have the throne speech, and then when we're back, we'll have the fall economic statement.
Are you sure, though, with all due respect, Minister, that Canadians had the impression that transparency and clarity would be delayed until the fall? I think the Prime Minister in particular campaigned on being straight with Canadians about how all of the stuff he is promising to do would actually unfold. And there are big questions. For example, your platform didn't even include the potential impact of, or the economic impact of, a trade war with the United States, some of which we're already feeling. You've made very specific promises on the spending side, for example, around government operations that don't appear to add up by any outside analysis I've seen. Like, don't Canadians deserve to know sooner rather than later how you're going to do what you've said you're going to do?
As soon as we can. Like I said, the first order of business, reduce tax for Canadians. That's.
This is basically a situation of taxation without representation. Mark Carney, this economic genius, can't put together a budget. He's not smart enough to do it? Yeah, he's smart enough. He doesn't want us to criticize how he's spending our money, so he's just going to keep using his emergency powers to just keep giving himself money to spend. This is not democracy. This is not how Canada runs. This should be sending off alarm bells and red flags to every Canadian. Ring, ring, ring. It's North Korea. It turns out they even have a budget.
That's the first order of business. And like you said, passing that to Parliament before recess is already something we'll have to work with other party to make sure that we have. But I say, we have received a mandate from Canadians to be bold, to act for them, and I'm sure parliamentarians will take that into account because...
To be bold? Why do they keep saying this? They don't have a majority mandate. Is Mark Carney working on some dirty deal in the background? A couple briefcases getting passed over and a couple MPs will be crossing the aisle? What's going on here? You guys don't have a bold mandate. They can say it as much as they like. It doesn't change the seats.
This is having the back of Canadians at the time, which is difficult for them. Affordability is the first thing that Canadians have been talking to us, apart from the tariff war with the United States.
Affordability. These guys caused the problem over the last 10 years, and then the liberal boomers voted them back in for another 2, 3, 4 years of this. It's just sickening that the liberal boomers who don't deal with affordability problems have sold out the rest of Canada for their own selfish, greedy desires, whether it's the fear of Trump or just their salivating love of the liberals. These Laurentian elites have essentially caused massive division in our country. This is going to take a miracle to bring us back together.
And what I'm saying is that you need a throne speech. And there'll be no surprise. My point is that we've been telling Canadians what are the priorities of this government. Very simple. We're going to fight the tariffs from the United States. We're going to grow the Canadian economy in one economy. They're going
to grow the economy like Francois did by signing all those big EV multi-billion-dollar projects that have all gone bust. They've all gone bankrupt. This guy's track record is awful. And there he is again. Ooh, spooked by another ghost. The only thing Canadians are spooked by is the amount of debt these guys have inflicted on us.
diversify our economy. We're gonna invest in our military. We're gonna invest in infrastructure.
They're not going to do any of this. Mark Carney's just going to invest in things that pumps up his stock value in Brookfield. Carbon credits, carbon credits, carbon credits.
How we intend to do, and now they're seeing how fast we can do them.
But I think the missing piece of that puzzle is, will you actually do it? And how are you going to pay for it? And the reason so for example, for the fall economic statement, I take your point that it's going to be more thorough. But I remember your predecessor, Chrystia Freeland, instructing us many times, this is not a mini budget. This is just an update on where finances are concerned. And I'll point to, for example, other things that have happened with your government in the past, where you've made a promise to cut consultants and instead the spending on consultants has gone up 13%. Like, how are we as Canadians to hold your government accountable for what you're promising if you're not going to be transparent about it for 6 months or so? And I take your point about the timeline. Throne speech. There's still another month.
And I would say this is a new government. So let's start. If we're going to start, this is a new government, new legislature, new prime minister. So the direction is very clear. He's been.
But you're still the finance minister.
Yeah, I'm still the finance minister. And I would say the world has changed also in 6 weeks.
Let me get this straight. So Mark Carney, the economic genius, can't figure out setting up a budget for the remainder of the 6 months of this year. But Stephen Harper came in, was able to set it up. Same sort of situation. I'm not buying it. Mark Carney clearly is a smart man because he went to Harvard, Oxford, worked at Goldman Sachs. Unfortunately, he's working the systems. He's working Canadians because we know he could set up a budget. He doesn't want to set up a budget. And there's a reason for that. I don't know what that reason is yet. I have a feeling it's not for the benefit of Canadians.
So Canadians understand that. And my objective to them is to provide them the best picture of the financial account of Canada, to be prudent. I mean, you'll hear me use that word more and more. Prudence, in a very...
What does it mean?
Well, prudent is that you take as much information as you have to make sure you provide them with the best possible picture. That's why I said when we're going to come back in the fall, we're going to be in a position to provide them with a fiscal update, which we're going.
So that's what we're going to get, a fiscal update at the end of the year because this genius Mark Carney can't put together a budget. I'm not buying it. These dirty dogs are up to dirty tricks. Everything is wrong with this government. I see Vassie's not happy with what she's hearing. What taxes are they reducing? Vassie's realizing in front of us that she shouldn't have propped up the Liberal government in the election. I think she was forced by her boss, otherwise she'd get fired. That was what's going on there. China hasn't written one up for him yet, unlike his mortgages they wrote up for him. No budget, no taxes. Will Canadians stop paying taxes? Taxation without representation. Did he not sign all of them EV contracts? Is he the best choice for finance minister? Yeah, he's an absolute disaster. Next up, we got Chrystia Freeland back in the mix. I thought we got rid of her. No, we didn't get rid of her.
I'm especially excited about internal trade. This is something that Canadian economists, Canadian geeks have been talking about for decades. Entire books have been written about it. The IMF has estimated that lifting all barriers to internal trade will add as much as 4% to our GDP. That is a lot, and we need it right now. And
is that because we lost our AAA credit rating? Is that why?
And I really believe this is a moment we can get it done. Internal trade has become sexy. It has. I know. It's funny, but yet true.
Is that because it's a vibe session? Is that why? It's one clown after the other. Next up, we got Gregor Robertson here, questioned on his terrible track record in Vancouver. He was essentially the start of the housing crisis back in 2008. That's when he got in as mayor.
Housing prices in Vancouver went up while you were mayor. I want to ask you, why do you feel like you have the skills necessary to do this when you saw a 179% increase in Vancouver housing prices?
Yeah, we've seen increases like that across Canada over the past decade. Certainly.
That's right. Just blame everyone else. That's what these guys always do.
Since my time as mayor, we've seen a lot more movement here in Ottawa, and we've got great programs starting to work now. Housing Accelerator program is partnering with cities to deliver.
That program doesn't deliver anything, and we all know it. It gives money to these municipalities that don't actually speed up housing. That's why Poilievre wanted to do a deal where provinces wouldn't get money unless they proved that they were speeding up housing construction.
I'm here to leverage my history as a mayor. I know what works in the ground. I wasn't getting the help I needed from the federal government when I was mayor, or the provincial government of all stripes. We need, as a government in Ottawa, to be delivering and partnering with cities and provinces all together.
He's blaming previous Liberal governments?
And making sure we're building enough supply and that the federal government is focused on affordable housing and delivering that. Now, I think that we need to deliver more supply, make sure the market is stable. It's a huge part of our economy. We need to be delivering more affordable housing. The government of Canada has not been building affordable housing since the 90s, and we've created a huge shortage across Canada. That's where the big need is right now. And
I'm sorry, what? This guy says that the prices shouldn't come down, but then there needs to be more affordable housing. You can't have it both ways.
I'm very encouraged that the Prime Minister and our commitment right now in government is to double construction and focus on the affordable side.
Focus on the affordable side, but he doesn't want the prices to come down.
I think those pledges are to double construction.
It's very ambitious. It's going to take us years to really scale up. We're going to have to leverage Canadian technology with offsite manufacturing. We got
with offsite manufacturing. I wonder who could provide that. Maybe Mark Carney can call up his buddy Xi Jinping, and maybe they can get in contact with the Modulaire Group and maybe work out a deal, something like that.
a lot of work to do on this, and it doesn't happen overnight. Housing is a slow-moving creature, and we got to do everything we can to speed it up. Okay?
Thank you very much.
That guy's an absolute loser. His record is terrible. He's not going to do anything for the housing industry. With industry in Canada tanking right now, we see the EV sector completely bottoming out. We've got a new industry minister, Melanie Joly. She's stepping in here after all her great achievements on foreign affairs. Now she's taking on this grand role.
Pleasure to be here. First and foremost, I'm happy to be the new industry minister. I had the chance this morning to talk with Vic Pidelli from Ontario already, and to talk about the Honda issue. Our goal is definitely to make sure that we're in solution mode. My goal is before the end of the day to be able to talk to the head of Honda. We know that we're in a trade war with the US. We know there's a lot of uncertainty.
Every time she speaks, she says nothing. Zero, zilch.
Coming out and unpredictability coming out from the White House. My goal, and that's why I wanted to become the new Minister of the Industry, it is to make sure that notwithstanding all the shenanigans coming out of the White House, we can create economic certainty here in the country, that we can attract investments, that we can...
You're not going to attract anything to Canada. With your horrible policies and terrible track record, nobody's going to invest here. Who's going to invest in Canada?
Create jobs. It's a huge undertaking. And we know right now that this trade war is what? It's an economic threat against our country. Now, what are the consequences of this trade war? Is definitely jobs in Canada.
Yeah, we all know this. Just think of this. The Liberals couldn't even keep Honda in Canada by offering $5 billion up front. They couldn't keep Honda with $5 billion. The economy should be so alluring to companies that they want to come here. You shouldn't have to pay them to come here. So for now, they're just going to pay steel and auto workers to sit on their hands and do nothing. Nobody's going to buy steel or cars from Canada, and they're going to impose higher taxes and tariffs on everything to help pay for it. Wealth distribution. Jolie explaining that the hardworking taxpayers will be paying for people in the auto and steel sector because Liberals are letting them fail. What we're seeing here is a slippery slope of democracy. The Liberals are trying to buy off Canadians with a measly tax break in exchange for not showing how they're spending our money.